In the last episode, I talked about targets and how they create dysfunction in organizations. And I used an example of a trader trading stocks, and if they had a target, how they found themselves trying to meet that target and how it caused their own personal dysfunction in trying to achieve that target for the day. And they start to make bad decisions. And so they've learned not to set targets for a period of time. Um, Now, I'm, for the most part, against organizations using targets unless they're customer targets. But, uh, when targets can't be met, you either manipulate the target in some way, or a lot of companies change the operational definition so they can hit the target. Um, that's kind of the subject of this episode. And just kind of as a kind of take us out of the uh, business of business for a second. I guess we're still in it, but take a look at the Dow Jones Industrial Average since 1884. 62 changes have been made to the Dow Jones Industrial Average. And there have been 15 changes just since the year 2000. And the reason being, I mean, companies merge and they go out of business. They change their name. They might take the company private. There's a lot of different reasons why they do. But what this does is it makes comparison of previous data problematic, right? Because it's not the same companies. Kind of an interesting side note to this is there's only one original member of the Dow Jones Industrial Average, and actually it's kind of on the ropes. It might get tossed out here eventually, and that's General Electric. But it's important for us to talk about that when targets can't be met, that there is this manipulation, and the changing of an operational definition is part of this. Um, but when you change the operational definition, you change the measure, and as I mentioned earlier, you're changing the ability to compare previous time periods. So it wouldn't make any sense, to go out and make changes if you're going to want to make comparisons over a period of time. But this is the way manipulation goes in organizations. You try to find ways to meet the targets that you have, and you waste more time on playing with different types of measures. Now, one of the things I do in my seminars is I go through, and I actually learned this from The New Economics, Dr. Deming's book, and it's to take a box of animal crackers. Now, in the old days, it used to be bears and elephants and lions and tigers, and you'd count how many were in a box. But you soon find out that some of the pieces are broken. So how do you categorize that? If you get half a elephant, what is that? If you get half a lion, is it a lion? Can you count it as a lion? And it just kind of displays how important operational definitions come to when you're taking any measure, because if you change that definition, you're changing the measure. This is one of the things I found in contact centers that, they don't, if a phone call that they're trying to categorize, an agent is trying to categorize, doesn't fall into a particular category, what they'll do is the agent will place it into miscellaneous or other. And so you learn nothing from it because it's a half a elephant, half a bear, or whatever. And this is one of the reasons why contracts between organizations require really rigorous operational definitions. And it can get ugly, as I found, if there's not a lot of trust between the two companies that are making an agreement. There's almost always some way to manipulate figures in contracts. And, I've seen it more these days than I used to, 20 years ago. because people had a little bit more trust between organizations. But a lot of that's flown out the window with people like Bernie Ebbers and others that I've had involvement with their companies in the past. Um, Now, products. I mean, if we're to count and come up with operational definitions, one of the things I used to run across in manufacturing was, if a product is reworked, is it defective? And I think when we're trying to measure rework, or if we're trying to measure a product and how good it is, if it has to be reworked, it certainly is more costly. And so you learn pretty quickly in manufacturing that, oh, well, we didn't count those as defective because we reworked them and now they're fine. you know, but somebody has to pay for the rework, right? It goes into the cost of the product. And then in service organizations, it's so much different. There are thousands of measures that can be looked at, and most companies that I've worked with waste their time on the wrong ones. They've selected measures that really don't matter. To be perfectly honest with you, they're measures that reflect things like they're the financial measures is a big one because that's an outcome of other things happening, and they spend an inordinate amount of time gnashing their teeth over financial measures, and hitting those financial targets. But those are, they are the outcome of if you do other things correctly in your organization. And they're also, for the most part, they're missing the ones organizations are missing measures that that do matter. The customer targets. The customer actually has a target when they come to you. You have to find out what it is, especially in service organizations, to try to hit it. It'd be like sitting down for dinner, and you ever be in a hurry to get to the next thing. Maybe it's a party, maybe it's a movie, maybe it's a theater. And you sit down there, and it just seems like the waiter is taking their time to get your order, and you sit there and go, I've got an hour and a half to eat, and we haven't even placed our order, and we're 30 minutes into it. And so you have to understand what those operational definitions are, and identifying the right measure, because everybody has something that they're trying to get done when they're placing an order or eating dinner or whatever. Those things have measures associated with them, and hitting those. Now, I don't know that those would, sitting down for dinner would be one I'd keep track of. But if I was a waiter, I certainly would want to be aware of what's important to the customer. When you go to take their order, how are they on a timeline? Any of those types of things. But they're often missing the wrong. They're often missing the targets that are important to customers because they don't ask the question. And so, spend time on identifying the right measures in your organizations and coming up with operational definitions that matter. So going back to the manufacturing example, what you're really trying to get to is not the number defective, but how costly it is, right, in order to make a particular product. And in essence, the same things go on in service organizations. You just have the opportunity to have a lot more things that you can measure. And like I said, a lot of the ones I've seen in especially large organizations are ones that have accumulated over time, and they don't really help you in any way. So spend time identifying those targets, coming up with operational definitions, and keep your organization away from targets that create dysfunction in your organization. That is what I wanted to cover this week. And remember, there is always a better way.